Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Aaron Wroblewski, who is the writer and creator of An Enra. I think I got it right. I think I got it right. If I said before, and I'm making this crystal clear, that if I got it wrong, Aaron would correct me. So far, I don't know if I'm being corrected yet, but if I'm not being corrected, we're on the right track.
Oh, hello.
And hope we're going to be back. And here we're back. We're back so far. So welcome to the show. This is the official way. We are so energetic that we knock the power out.
I was getting a bit nervous there.
Believe me, I'm more nervous than you. So obviously you have a lot going on. We obviously have massive energy here, knocking the power out off a StreamYard. And I know that there's a lot going on with the Kickstarter. Obviously we're pushing issues 3 and 4 with an Enra at the moment. But let's catch everybody up on what an Enra is for those who don't know what the comic is about and all the stuff that's going on with it. Because I know that you did issues 1 and 2, and now we're completing, I guess, what is known as the first arc. I think is a safe assumption.
Yes, yeah. Each issue starts with a small section, which is like a glimpse into the future, and follows a survivor with his trusted companion, four-legged friend, as they go through like a post-apocalyptic world, um, trying to survive. The main part of the story um, follows Dr. Richard Marin and his team of scientists and doctors as they struggle to basically to understand a virus which they find on a flight which lands at Heathrow Airport. And the the first issue kind of introduces the characters and the virus, and then the second and continuing issues will basically follow them as they try and understand what's actually happening, what's killing these people and cocooning them and changing them again. So it's all good. A lot of horror, a lot of action. Can't wait to share it to everybody.
So let's dive into it because obviously my first question is that there's a lot of pandemic stuff out there. 23 Days, Contagion, I think is the movie, or Contagious is the movie, and there's a few other things out there. World War Z is also something that sort of has that post-apocalyptic vibe that comes to mind. Roboticlips, which is a great book as well. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And obviously, all those things deal with things differently. Obviously, we are living in the middle of COVID. So, what was the inspiration for this? Because the idea of a virus killing us all off is not new, but the airplane component is a nice touch to it. And the fact that we get glimpses of the future, but then we're also getting towards that future and why we got there and things of that nature. And so, what was the complete inspiration? Because there's a lot of stuff that is dropped out there into this, and obviously, this is a slow burner in the way I viewed it and reading it and interpreting this entire story. So, where did that entire concept come from?
I've always liked post-apocalyptic horror film, TV series, but very few actually allows you to see how it happened. Most of it, is set after it, after it's happened, living in that world. Well, I like that. Hence why the little glimpses at the start of each issue. But I wanted to show the reader how it happened, what events led up to it, and um, though it does, slowly introduce the virus and what happened, it does speed up. There is a lot that happens, especially in the next two issues. Um, the first story arc, the first two issues, is set in London, in Heathrow, and then the second story arc, the next four issues after that, will be set in Hong Kong. because it follows the flight, it follows the passengers, and explains how they get infected, how they, their journey as well. So it explains a lot of things and it reveals a lot, including the source, which will be in the third story arc. So that's revealed. No spoilers.
So I'm going to drop some things that are not spoilers per se, but obviously, plane somehow gets this virus, and stuff goes on the plane, and in of itself, I mean, you could have the entire comic take place on that plane. Who knows? Maybe the fourth story arc is going to be the prequel of what happened on the plane. I mean, we could go that direction too at the same time of what happened before. And there's a lot of ideas that I could drop and then suggest here because I got like 15 of them off the top of my head, which means I really like this book. So obviously, plane more or less lands. Everybody is either infected, it's some weird thing. There's all these black cocoons, I guess is a good way how to put it, slash sacks of things happening, and obviously we know people are infected, and so what is that like? Now this is becoming an international incident. We have that aviation component in it, and it's like, what happened and what caused this on the plane, or was it before the plane? And there's a lot of stuff going on here because there's a lot of questions on both sides. Where was it something on the plane? Was it something that else came into it? Is there aliens involved for God knows what, or like all that stuff? Because there's a lot to play with this. And so, what is that like to introduce this concept and these questions? Because these are, and I'm not looking for you to answer the question, but like even story writing, because this does allow for a lot of interpretation for the reader to say, hey, what is all this dealing with?
Yeah, that's what I wanted. It gets the reader interested. Because originally, it started out as a TV series, and I was with an agency, and we were shopping it around, trying to get studios interested. And one of the agents actually thought it would be a good graphic novel, and luckily they had a couple of artists on the book. Went through a couple of them, didn't really settle well, but then I met Ezekiel, the artist. We hit it off like that. It was brilliant. He's been amazing.
So
Yeah,
to even talk about that, so to talk about that, because obviously TV is very different than comics. But this idea, and you're not the first person who said, hey, I wanted to write a movie or wanted to write a television show, and then I've adapted it into comics. And obviously, I'm a big Avatar: The Last Airbender. One of my favorite interviews was with Jesse Flowers, who plays Toph on that show, and I got to interview her twice, and I love dropping that in there. But the reason why I drop it in there is that entire thing continued on as a graphic novel. And so, what is that like? Because in TV, especially when you're writing episodes or even the pilot, you need to introduce a bunch of characters, and you need to have that plot twist at the end. And comics and television are very similar to that point, where at the end of every single issue, you need to have something either that ends the arc, if we're doing 4 arcs or 6 arcs, and then also allows for the second arc to begin if you're going to do another 6 issues, or at the end of every single issue, you need that something that says, oh man, Batman's tied up and how is he going to escape type of scenario. And so this comic does that very well, and I have a feeling that when you were pitching it to TV, whether you had the pilot written or not, or you had a pretty rough storyboard, you had those in there already, which helps to write the comic in many ways. So what was that like to take it from television into comics? Because there are different tools to play with, but there's also a lot of similar tools to play with.
Yeah, it's actually, for me, it's very similar because visualizing the themes, what you want to happen with your script, is very similar to how I do it with adapting it to the graphic novel scripts for the artists. Because the first issue actually took a lot longer because Ezekiel was making the comic from the original pilot.
Oh no.
going on. They've all been, converted to a comic script, so it's a lot more streamlined. But yeah, the process for myself is very similar. I write like a brief treatment. I usually expand that to a main outline of all the issues, and then I go and start writing the issues themselves. So that's pretty much my process.
And so, that's super interesting because some people say that adapting it is hard. Others say it's easy. Obviously, you're in the easy camp. I have never written a comic. It's a possibility, but my plate is legitly full at the moment with everything that's going on in my world. So my idea is right now tabled, but the rough outline is out there. And a few people know of what it looks like, and it can be done very, very well the right way. And what I have intended for it, especially with some other people involved, is something that I think is going to be really cool to look at. But obviously, even going further off of TV, one of the things about television is you need to have interesting characters. And I think you have a boatload of interesting characters in this entire series. I think the best one to start with is Dr. Richard Marone. And he's not your ordinary doc. Let's leave it at that. And he sort of has dealt with something similar to this. This might not be the first time that this guy has dealt with something. Obviously, we get some flashbacks and some insight into his entire thought process. And he's sort of the one who's heading up the investigation with a team and sort of figuring stuff out. And so what was that like, building a composite of him? Because I find that he is the driving force of this story, and that we get sort of really his perspective and his entire drive on who he is throughout this. And it's pretty safe to say that he's probably made several mistakes in the future or in this circumstance.
Yeah, he is one of the main characters. They're all kind of main characters in a sense. Because there are more backstories for him. Eleanor is the other doctor. She's pretty much like the mother hen of the group. She mothers everybody, including Richard. So they all have their own little pieces of like a family. So I wanted to have that. They're all very close and worked together for a long time in stressful situations as well, dealing with virus outbreaks. And why haven't they seen it before? There's been no record of this ever. So it sends red flags. Like, where did this come from? Was it engineered? Is it a weapon? So there's a lot of scenarios that they have to work through to investigate to find out why this is happening. And it's supposed to be exciting read. It's supposed to be engaging, a little, well, more than a little.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Perfect. You cut off in the last second of that. So what were you saying about it being engaged? Because obviously my internet is not cooperating today. It's decided to be difficult at this moment, apparently. So I'm letting everybody know that it's not being a very good boy at the moment.
I kind of lost my train of thought.
So to talk about this a little bit more, because obviously they're all dealing with the virus outbreaking, and obviously it's exciting for them to some degree that they get to work on this cool project and figure out what the hell's happening. But they're also sort of red flags are going off, and whether it's being engineered or if it's a bio attack or if it's a mutation or something else is in effect, possibly. And so obviously that's kind of where we were going with this. And You know, even to go further off of this, I mean, we also get to see them set up an entire quarantine area, and we also see the question: do we open this plane? Do we even open up the plane? Do we even investigate? What do we do to protect ourselves? Like, what is that entire thing too? Because obviously that's a cool thing where it's the issue. I don't know. Have you seen the Resident Evil movies?
Yes.
At the end of the first movie, the question arises: do we open it up? Meanwhile, if they didn't open it up, the entire outbreak would not have happened. And yet they open it up, and well, things sort of happen, and well, there you go. And it's sort of similar also in that. And I think that's a really interesting question that you present in this thing too, where, well, if the virus is just in the plane, do we open up the plane? And
well, that's the main thing, isn't it? It's like, opening Pandora's box. Do you open it? But curiosity is, a human nature. It drives us, to explore, to try and understand things. So, unfortunately, like Resident Evil, they opened the plane and went in and found the virus. Would it have escaped? You know,
okay, I can't hear him. This is not good. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I don't know if we're back. I don't know what's going on.
Stop talking to myself.
Here we go. Hopefully this is going to work now.
Fingers crossed.
So obviously we just got cut off in the middle of that, but obviously Pandora's box and them opening it up and all that stuff, because the way I view it is that they want to open it up because I think they're curious as to what happened on the plane, much like they were in Resident Evil, and I equate it because I think it's a perfect analogy. And at the same time, it's also, they're curious, they want to see what happened, and I also think to some degree they're saying, hey, is this beyond just the plane as well? And so we get all that in there too, which I just think is super interesting with that entire scenario, because obviously they kind of take the next step too, where they then bring all this stuff to a lab to examine it. And well, we sort of know what happens then is now that stuff is out in the open. And so like they might have even contributed to spreading it. So what is that all like in all this discussion? And obviously throwing this with these characters dictating all of this, because it is super interesting when they go and find the virus and they go in, now they're examining the virus, but they gotta set up a perimeter, set up the labs, and figure all that stuff out, and then also sort of jeopardize to figure out what it is.
Normal quarantine sites. So they follow the rules to the letter. They do everything by the book, but unfortunately, the book isn't always right. So even though they do everything right, open the plane correctly. They're suited up. They quarantine the bodies. But like I said before, it's Pandora's box. I don't know if anyone, the listeners heard it. In that scenario, because if you don't and it gets out anyway, then you're behind. You're chasing it all the way. So they're trying to get ahead. They're trying to understand the virus, trying to understand what's going on. But unfortunately, they let it out into the world, and as you know from the glimpses, it will get out. It does infect the world, and this is like one little pocket of the infection.
Yeah, and obviously we are inching towards that position throughout every single issue. And one of the big things, and I'm about to sort of spoil something, is that they're investigating it in a lab, and I think this happened in issue 2, and then the body goes missing. And whether the body walked up by itself and reanimated, or if somebody took it, or something else happened for a particular reason, well, that might also be a contributing factor to all this. And obviously, that's a big red herring. I think that happened in issue 2, right?
Yeah, one of the doctors is about to perform an autopsy. So he's about to open the body up and try and understand what's going on inside. He's distracted. When he comes back, the body's gone. So, and then issue 3 leads directly after that. So it goes straight in.
Yeah, and obviously issues 3 and 4 are the Kickstarter, and so I don't want to dive too much into issues 3 and 4 with what's going on with that and everything that's happening in them. And obviously we're going to sort of get answers to what happened with that exactly. And so obviously that's sort of what issues 3 and 4 deal with, and whether they're expanding, where they're going, and all of that stuff. So obviously it's a big cliffhanger at the end of issue 2 that leads directly into issues 3 and 4, and well, we're inching closer to that position. And so what is that like for you to just drop that big thing in there that definitely dictates what's going on with that? Because I think it's definitely straight out of TV. Because that's what like usually happens at the end of season 1, in a television show, and we know there's going to be a season 2.
Yeah, that's kind of why I think it's helped me writing the scripts for the TV show and how to form the panels of the comic and leaving people wanting more. How to end it in a way that kind of brings the reader back when the next issues come out. So I'm really pleased how it ended in issue.
You got cut off again right when you said issue 2. Clearly, I'm having an internet problem, which means that after this interview, I'm going to be on the phone with my cable company. Maybe we should go and then live that, because I'm sure that apparently everybody's going to want to see me, and I have a beautiful way with words, and it's on me and it's not on you. But what were you saying with the way issue 2 ended and how it's leading into issue 3? So you got cut off for a second there.
Formulating how to do the panels for each issue and how they end, leaving on cliffhangers for people to wanting to come back and read more. So I'm hoping they'll be just as thrilled to read it as I am writing it.
And obviously, I mean, I've read issues one, and then I've read some of more beyond issue one, and I have a pretty good idea where it's going. And so I don't want to ruin issues three and four for anybody who wants to back it. Obviously, the Kickstarter is still going on with everything that's out there, and so I definitely want to dive into some of the Kickstarter side of this because I think you've done something very interesting where for $1 you can actually get access to the first 12 pages of issue one. And
I've changed that. It's now free. It's on the campaign story. There's a link. You just read. It's pretty much almost as soon as you click on the page, it's like a little hyperlink. You can click on that, and it takes you directly to the Dropbox with the first 12.
and so to even go off of this, because obviously initially it was $1, and then you get the first 12 pages free, and then the idea behind it, and I haven't seen anything like it. You know, you're the first person that I've seen like this. I've seen cheap digital packages, but I've never seen a teaser drop like this where you get it, and then if you like it, you get it immediately, and if you like it, you could buy the rest, or you could back it, and you get a real teaser pretty relatively cheap, and then now you've made that free. And so obviously this is a very cool position where, you know, getting a reward immediately, getting access to something, getting to experience something at a very low rate. What prompted that idea? Because that I haven't seen, and obviously now it's a bit of a moot point, but I think it's a really good lesson for other Kickstarters to sort of take from is that, well, giving your audience a teaser, well, whether it's free or it's cheap, can be very, very helpful to the point where, you know, we're getting this people to say, hey, I sort of like this or I don't, and I'm getting it immediately. So where was the thought process on that? Because I've never seen that before.
I can't afford to take chances, especially on Kickstarters. So I thought, well, the best way to do it is give them a taste. Give them 12 pages. That's a good, feel for the comic. If they like what they read, then they at least have seen it. They know what it's about. They know what the art's like, the storyline, from the teaser. And if they like it, then they are more than or one of the big ones. I'm doing a $250 Kickstarter exclusive that you can be part of the comic. One of my work colleagues did it for his son, who loves comics. So, and everyone from $7 upwards gets tickets to a free raffle. Like everyone gets a certain amount of tickets, and the winner will be part of the comic.
And so what is that like? Because I've seen that reward done a lot of different ways. Where I've seen that people can buy into it. People can obviously you're doing a raffle. I've seen raffle for original artwork, and I've seen that every backer gets in it. You know, who backs on a physical tier. I've also just seen people buy their way in. I've seen other methodologies through a variety of positions. And so what is it like to have, you know, I guess, and I'm going to probably say it, you know, sort of bluntly, but have more of a fair, equal opportunity that you could legitimately buy in for not $300, because a lot of those rewards are 150 bucks or 200 bucks or $500 to buy into the comic, and you're having a position where with a certain purchase of $7, you could just get a shot at being part of it, and and I'm not, you know, a socialist by nature, but I do like when there is an equal opportunity at a much lower cost, because it is kind of nice when that's thrown out there, and that there is an opportunity for that, and that because I feel like, you know, I don't know about you, but I don't have $500 to spend on somebody's Kickstarter. No offense to all my Kickstarter friends. I mean, I will drop $25 for a variant cover. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with $500. And I think most people who are backing on Kickstarter, I don't know how many people back a $500 pledge, unless you're a super crazy fan or it's a really big Kickstarter. It's one of those things where I think it is a lot to ask, $500, but for $10 to buy 2 raffle tickets, it's a little bit more reasonable in my opinion.
Well, that's why I asked my work colleague who went for the price. I said, I was thinking about I was doing the raffle anyway, but I couldn't decide on the price of like how much. He went to speak to his wife and his son. They loved it. Loved the idea of getting you even get a character sheet of it as well, signed by the artist. And he loved that idea. He loved his son's massive into comics, and he loved the first 2 issues which they've got. But yeah, the raft itself was an idea of to give back to the backers. Everyone has a fair shot. The story campaign. If you scroll down to the bottom, it has each ticket tier, and then I'll print it off. I'll be cutting a lot of paper, stick them into hopefully I've got a big enough bowl to do it all, and I'll get my daughter to pick the lucky winner. So I'll hopefully record it and put it on as an update. Fingers crossed if I get funded, and hopefully get the lucky. You there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here. Internet's just being really frozen. So obviously, hopefully, we're trying to get you across that funding line. Obviously, getting you press here because I would like to see this funded as well. I know that I think are you at 60%? What is it, 40 or 60%? You're funded now.
60%.
And so obviously you have 40% more to go, and obviously we're going to talk about some of the rewards here because there's some cool stuff going on with it. Obviously, there's a lot of digital stuff where you could get pretty much anything digital. You get issues 3 and 4 digitally. At this point, you can get 1 and 2 digitally. You can get all of them digitally because obviously some people like digital, and digital tends to be cheaper. And some people say, hey, I just want to read the story. I don't care about the collectability of it. And some people say, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm perfectly fine. I just got an iPad about 2 months ago, and I read a lot of comics now digitally, and I love it because it's so accessible, and I don't have room to read what I want to read. I just got a Comixology subscription. So it's a game changer for me where I'll tear through graphic novels I'll legitimately sit down on a Saturday and read like 10 graphic novels in 8 hours, and it's great. So my point is that I think that on the digital front, it's super smart. So obviously my question is that how do you feel about digital comics, given that I feel like in the last 18 months, there's been a massive change in digital comics where the stigmatization of them has drifted away massively, where and I hate to embarrass some of my friends, and I'm not going to name who they are, but when they see this interview, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, is that they're like, oh, I don't prioritize digital. I'm like, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table. That I would prioritize digital before I would prioritize physical for 2 reasons. Digital is cheaper by definition because it's still printing. And then secondly, it's the most easily distributable position because you can legitly email it to somebody, or you can put it in Dropbox and send out a link, or you can legitimately just put a link somewhere and you could set up an entire funnel or a paywall, and then they can just have access to an entire Dropbox link as the entire thing. It is the most easily accessible file beyond audio. So obviously, how do you feel about that entire digital side of comics right now?
booming as people progress, to the point where you could probably see animated, like slightly animated graphic novels. When
They exist. They
yeah,
exist.
I think they
VR.
are going to be amazing. Even with sound effects and all that as well. I could see it not as obviously not as much as like an anime itself, watching it on your tablet, but I think graphic novels, comics are gonna tale, which I'm dabbling in thinking of maybe trying to move it into a more of a kind of purely digital, where it's slightly animated. So I'm dabbling in that, so seeing how much it'll cost, because obviously if it costs too much to do, then it's kind of pointless.
So on that position, and I will drop this. There was somebody called two people that I interviewed, Bally Skilling or Skilling. I don't know if you're familiar who they are.
No.
Well, they're a team, and they had a comic, and what they figured out is that they have they found an app, and they actually, you could put it, and what it does is that it doesn't necessarily, it animates some panels, but also there are other panels that what winds up happening with them is that it's almost like what happened before those panels gets animated. So you could read the comic straight up without any VR attached to it and any virtual readers essentially, and your iPhone. But if you take out your iPhone on certain panels, you can actually do that. And then also for certain tiers, for certain people, they actually were drawing in the VR component so that it's a piece of art that you can buy for like $300, but then it can do VR animation. And so it's a super interesting concept because it changes the way you can do things. And I think that's about to become bigger. And I think that people who adapt to that, because as long as the comic makes sense on its surface and you have that VR that just expands it, I think that's the key. I think if we go into the direction with VR and all that stuff, where you need the VR to understand the comic, I think that's going to be the biggest failure of that. So I think it has to be done where the comic is strong enough by itself, and then VR and animation only adds to it further.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm going with, where the comic is comic, and then have like standalone add-ons, expanding it. So that's what I'm kind of researching at the moment and looking into.
And I think that that's the future, because I think that when mediums combine, because comics in general, comics, it uses your right side and your left side of your brain. And what winds up happening is that it also allows for a lot of control of the reader. So when I read a comic, I have complete control over how fast somebody speaks. I have control of how deep their voice is. I have control of how high or what they're exactly saying and in what tone. And everybody reads a comic differently. Obviously, there's a framework that can't be broken, but I could assume a comic or a character says something in 30 seconds, or I could assume they say it in 90 seconds, or I could assume they say it in 3 minutes. Within give or take. Obviously, if the plane lands in the UK, I can't assume the plane landed in the US. But I could assume that when they were, for instance, in your comic, that they might have had a 5-minute discussion about breaking the hatch versus a 10-minute, and I can make that determination per se on certain things, unless it's explicitly stated at 10:41 they talked about it, and 10. Great. Woo. I'm scared already. I have enough problems today, clearly. So as I was saying, I think this idea of combined media is brilliant in many ways, and I think that when we start combining media, because comics is already that, and then we start adding things like music and VR into it. Before I went into my tangent, it really becomes a much cooler medium, and I think that that's where we're heading in society anyway. I mean, look at it, video games have become the new movies in many ways. And so I think it's super interesting. But enough about that, because I do want to talk about the physical rewards, because obviously everybody can get the physical rewards too. So you can get issues 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you get the physical rewards. I think with certain physical rewards, you get the digital as well. I think.
Well, I think most, if I remember rightly, most of the physical gets, you pretty much get all the digital as well.
Which I like, because sometimes, and obviously I think that caters to the collector's market very, very well, because it means that they don't have to go rip open a book and have it crease. So I think that that's smart. I hate when creators don't do that, and I've been back to few where legitimately they charge like an extra $2 for a digital copy, and I think that is a mistake. So I think that is super important. So obviously, if you like what we're talking about, everybody watching this, and you want to back a physical version, you can get the digital with it. And also you get all the books signed by I think you, or is it Enrique?
Both. Signed by both the artist and myself.
So that's also very cool as well, because in a lot of circumstances, the writer and the artist are not under the same roof, or they're not near each other, or that one of them is in Texas and the other's in California, and so obviously sometimes that just can't happen. So obviously that is super cool as well to that degree. So obviously if you're big into signed books, that's something that's cool. And obviously if you get all 4 books and you want them signed and there's an entire pledge for that, well, there you go. Obviously you get everything taken care of and signed. So I do want to mention that as well for the people who are interested in that. And then let's talk about the exclusive Kickstarter exclusive, because I like that as well. So what is the deal with that one? And I might even have pictures of it. I might. I'm not too sure if I do. Oh, actually, wow, I actually totally forgot to put those pictures in. So I'm very responsible right now. I completely forgot to put those pictures in. But anyhow, they're out there, and they're pretty cool. So obviously, what is that entire process of developing your Kickstarter exclusive? It's meant for Kickstarter, and it's probably not going to be printed for anybody who doesn't back the Kickstarter.
Nope. It was again. It was purely because it was for the backers. For the fans, the readers. If they get the exclusive, it is a one-off. So once all the orders in, I'll take them off. I think I have to do them in batches of 25. So if there's more than 25, there'll be a big Viking burning of all the other issues. So they are very, very exclusive. Even my family will not be getting them. I will fight them off. These are only for backers. They will be numbered as well. As soon as I get them in, we're kind of hoping there will be a few left so I can burn them as a ceremonial, but not too many.
So to even talk about this, because I think this is super important. So I think it is important that, when somebody says, hey, there's a limited number of something, that they don't go and then say, hey, I'm going to put the other 10 on my web store, even if it's a Kickstarter exclusive and 40 people ordered them. I had to buy 50 because of just how it's printed off, and that, you don't release those 10. Because while 50 is still a massively exclusive number, and I don't think anybody's going to be too angry if it's 50, at the same time, I do think, though, that there has to be a level of integrity. And unfortunately, in the comic world, both on the mainstream level and even in the Kickstarter level, sometimes there's this circumstance where somebody says, oh, there's 350 printed of something, or there's 1,000 printed of something, and then we come out and find out, 3 years later, there's really 1,200 of them printed. And it does change the value of what's out. And it does change this perceived position. And the fact that you're going to burn them, and obviously I'm assuming you're going to do it in a safe manner or an unsafe manner. I mean, I personally don't care how you do it. That's just me, though. But in all kidding aside, the fact that you're going to destroy those other 10, I think, is super credible, and it adds a lot. And I think that it is important. And I think it's almost important for people to actually see you destroy those 10 to get the point of.
Yeah, I'll be videoing.
Obviously, after everybody gets theirs and says their book is okay, because that's the other thing too. Yes. That's the other thing too. That's really important, is that you're not going to go destroy them until those people who, if there's 40 people who get the Kickstarter exclusive, statistically, books do get damaged on Kickstarter, and sometimes you have to replace them. So obviously, I'm assuming you're going to do that. You're going to burn the rest after the fact.
Yes.
I want to get that put across.
Everyone is happy with their their book. Everyone is, nice little tip to say they've received it. Everyone's happy. I will, I will burn the rest.
But to get to the point, and I think it's super important because I want other Kickstarter people to understand this, is that definitely not releasing it. And I think that if you say this book is exclusive for Kickstarter and then you go put it up on your web store and you have 10 of them left, and even though it's super exclusive, I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, I can understand somebody saying, hey, I'm ordering 100 of X book, and then if 90 people order it and then the other 10 go up on my web store, I'm cool with that. But I'm not okay when this book's only for Kickstarter and then you got an extra 5 left over and then you're selling it at a con, because that defeats the entire purpose. Yeah. I mean, it's a problem because I think integrity matters more than ever now.
Yeah. Separately. But this Kickstarter exclusive is for the cover and me and the artist signing it. So the cover itself is exclusive. There will be never, I will tell the artist to delete it once it's done. It will never see the light of day again after this Kickstarter. That's what I want to make sure. This is purely for this campaign. So this, it's.
So to even go off of that, so you're gonna have the artist completely deleted and not build a NFT, non-fundable token on it?
Nope. It will be one-off. It will be put onto this exclusive. I will ask him to delete it from his, his computer, his his backup. Not. Something I'll put on a update, but there will be no cover where you can click save as image and then print it off from your own computer. There'll be nothing. This will be exclusive on the print. And that's it.
Well. I hope that somebody saves a file so that when we get to like issue 100 of this series, you get an art book. And we get it in an art book. I hope I could convince you for that purpose. Not for a cover purpose, but to have an entire cover gallery of your next 100 Kickstarters and all the exclusive covers.
I'll have to think about it. Because I don't want to, as the British say, take the piss. I don't want to say something and then go against it. If it's an exclusive for this, then I'd rather, everyone be happy.
I'm going to convince you.
I messed with it and I did something, I shouldn't have.
I'm going to convince you because it's not a cover. So it'll be in a book that has a bunch of covers in it of it, but it's not going to be on the cover. It's going to be like an image of the cover. So of the book, and it's going to be the actual artwork. So it's going to be like an artwork of a gallery of all the covers in a nice book. So that's why I'm asking you to save it, because you'll thank me later. We'll look back in 5 years from now, and you'll be like, he was right. I assure you, because I love those types of things, and I've actually bought books, and I'm a big Zenescope fan. And the reason why I say this, and I'm hoping that people understand this, and I think it's also a really good lesson for other artists. Zenescope releases every once in a while, like all the covers, all the top covers from like their Oz series, and so it's in a comic book that has a new cover on it, new art, and what they do essentially is that they just want to share all the cool covers that sometimes people can't afford, but people can look at it in like a comic book format. And it's a super cool concept, because then I'm like, oh man, this person did this. Oh my God, how did I not see this cool cover from this thing? I must have missed it. But it's not like a reprinting of the cover, but it's a reprinting of the image of the cover, if that makes any sense. So that's why I'm saying that, because after 100 issues of this series, believe me when I tell you, people are going to want to see this artwork. They're not going to want, and I don't think it's taking a piss if you never reprint it again, because I love the fact that you're never reprinting it again. I love exclusivity. I love it. I think it's the best way to go in comics right now. I have an entire business that deals with this, buying and selling exclusive comics. In fact, I'm buying a bunch tomorrow that are going to be exclusive. So I completely get the business side of it, and I think it's really good for people on Kickstarter to have that, because people want that. People who are buying this Kickstarter book are not interested per se in the idea of having a generic cover. If 100,000 people wanted your cover A of issue 4 of Enera, you would print 100,000 copies, but you're only going to print so many of that Kickstarter copy. And I think it's super important to cut it off at a certain point, because it does mean something. It also shows who's a real fan. And I love that. And I love exclusivity, because I think it's the way of the future as well.
Me too. That's why I'm doing it. It's all for the fans. And I do like the poster book. I like that. I'll do that. At six.
Mm-hmm. Still here? Hopefully I can hear you. So I definitely want a poster book, because I think that is going to be awesome, and I also think people really appreciate art. And obviously we spoke about it also. You could be in the story, and then you could be written into the story, raffle as well into the comic. So that's really cool. Did I miss anything so far as rewards?
No, I don't think so. I kind of kept it. I tried to keep it simple, because the previous Kickstarter had like posters in it, and it started getting quite overwhelming. With family, work, get everything involved, everything sorted out. So I wanted to keep this one simple. It's physical issues. It's digital copies. You can be in the comic if you want to pay for it, or everyone has the chance with the raffle to be then all you do is like send a photograph of yourself or a loved one, and then you'll be drawn into the comic, and then you'll get like a you'll get that as a PDF, a high-res PDF, so you can print it off as big as you want.
Yeah, and so obviously this is a very straightforward Kickstarter. So obviously people, it's not complicated, and I know people who do a lot of cool Kickstarters and whatnot, and they have a blast with it. And I like both. I like simple, Yeah, I just backed a Kickstarter that had 5 options. It had 5 options, and it had no stretch goals or anything like that. And it was great because it was like boom, 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 boom. There was no major copyright on it as well, copywriting it, which is great as well. So that was cool. And so I like that sometimes as well, where I find your Kickstarter to be straightforward, pretty simple. It's a pretty easy way to get the story. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious on that note, though, because obviously a lot's going on with Kickstarter lately. How do you feel about Kickstarter? Because big names have come into it. I think more people are on Kickstarter. A lot of projects late 2020 sort of held off, and then a bunch of them started happening in 2020. And I think a lot more are now starting to happen and come out again on Kickstarter, where I think, somebody said like this time last year, there was like maybe 178, and now there's over 200, which means that there's 22 more projects minimally happening on Kickstarter now, which is good, but it's also bad because there's more competition. And the problem is that when you have more people, there's only so much money that can go around with
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
You can only drain your consumer so much. If somebody has $100 and they're spending it on Kickstarter every single month, it's a lot of money to drop on Kickstarter. But if you have legitimately another 20% more projects, well, that money doesn't get divided up 20% more. It just means that 20% of projects aren't going to make it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think ideally, I'd love to be less because I get the more money, like you said. But again, I think it makes it more competitive. So you have to, our campaigns have to up the game, have to be more competitive. More rewards. A lot of cross promotion is brilliant. Like my Kickstarter, you get 5 comics. For the price of $7, you get 7 issues of comics. So this is what I think. It's evolving. That's why you're getting more Kickstarters because people are seeing the up in people backing. So I think it's gonna keep going up and up.
Did you also feel that also now everybody has to wear more hats? Because in my business, and we were speaking before we went on air talking about podcasting, and last April there was a hell of a lot less competition. Now there is more competition in my sector and what I'm doing, and now I see everybody that I know, and I mean everybody I know has something going on, and there are people who are indie comic creators, and not to blast them, but like they're now in the game too, and they're in my sector, and it's crazy. And so obviously I have to step up my game, and I like competition. I'm a competition guy. I like competing. I like to have that position, and I've been doing this a long time. But obviously, I now have to become a bigger, better marketer too, and I have to go figure ways around things. And so I also feel like that's a big thing right now as well, where now everybody on Kickstarter has to become a marketer. Everybody on Kickstarter has to kick up their social media. Everybody has to be active on social media now. You have to sort of act a certain way. You have to be very, very active. And then in my sector in particular, and I'm going to use it as an example, I have to be active to find guests. And meaning that I am now very active on Twitter to find people. I'm very active on Facebook to find people. And then I'm even more active in promoting. And so how do you feel about that? Because it does seem that you have to now wear that hat too. And it's not just you, but it's everybody in Kickstarter, whether you're the editor or the artist or the writer or you're somehow involved, and you got to be massively active on it. And I think it's good and bad.
Yeah. Probably 5-6 years ago, you could put a Kickstarter campaign and it just do itself. But now like he says, you have to promote yourself. People are not just interested in your work, but interested in you as a creator. Who is this guy? What makes him tick? He first campaign was terrible. It didn't. I think it made like $200, purely because I had no video. I had very little, promotional product, so it tanked. But again, I'm constantly learning. Like I said, I'm not really been doing this much, so I'm going on to the learning process. Going on to
To even talk about that, because I think this is something that's also fascinating, where the last 3 years in Kickstarter, maybe 4, if we go back to 2017 to now, Kickstarter has got through an evolution. I think it's a safe assumption to make, where I backed a project and I had a really bad experience on Kickstarter, and then it took me about 2 years to come back. It took me 2 years, and it took me and COVID really brought me actually back into Kickstarter, oddly enough, because I was interviewing a lot of Kickstarter people, and my trust had to be rebuilt. But obviously, from speaking to all these people in the last year or so, I've realized that there's a massive learning curve. And a bunch of these people who are doing very well right now, I had an entire panel, and I asked the question as the opener, one of the first questions I asked on that, and I said, hey guys, like, what's the secret to Kickstarter? And I asked some version of that, and they're like, yo, you tell me, man. We're still trying to figure it out. And then these guys do really well on Kickstarter for their projects, where they'll do maybe 300%, on a small goal of like $800, they'll do $2,400, which is great because it fills their book and then some. But the idea here is that, they don't even know, and they've been doing it 4, 5, 6 Kickstarters. So obviously there's a lot of stuff that's sort of going on with this where, I think there is a big learning curve. And let's be realistic. Social media is changing dramatically. Every 5 seconds, TikTok, Clubhouse just came out. Now, I'm not on Clubhouse. I'm on TikTok. I haven't done a TikTok in a while, but I do a bunch of Facebook Live stuff. And so obviously the interview game is changing tremendously as well. So obviously there's a lot of learning that's going on, and there's also a lot of evolving every 6 months, I feel. And so, and then even how comics get printed and all that stuff. So what is that like for you, that constantly you have to be learning new things and learning new traits? Because I think it's good and bad.
It's good that you're constantly learning, you're adapting. Obviously, the bad side of that is, is there enough time in the day? Because I work full time. I do 9-hour shifts every day. I work from home, luckily. So, well, depending on your point of view. So after I'm working, I'm here on my own in the apartment for the week.
So even, I don't know, good?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. So obviously, point of view, working, and even just this idea that you're right now home, which I think my question is going to sort of lead into the answer that got cut off a little bit. But obviously, everybody in the U.S., you're in the U.S. You don't sound like you're in the U.S., but he's in the U.S. I assure you, everybody. But one of the things is that everybody more or less is working from home if you have a job that allows you to do so. So that gives more time now in the day because you're not traveling to your job. But at the same time, a lot of stuff also isn't open and cons aren't happening, which also probably grants more time as well. And so, and obviously with the pulling out of the con, I'm the first person. I was ready for the con to end. And I was already sort of ready for that. And my entire practice as a podcaster that was pre-recorded, not live, was geared up for that anyhow. But obviously I went live when all these cons started getting canceled. And so that's been probably one of the biggest also adaptations, is that you have to now understand that I have to drive traffic, and I also have to start owning traffic. And I'm in that transition right now where I am driving traffic, but I don't own the traffic. And so that's where I'm shifting to at the moment. which is inside sort of social media, and that's a whole different podcast. But what has that been like for you, where now that things like San Diego were canceled last year and canceled this year, and a bunch of cons are going ahead in certain areas of the country where they're starting to sell tickets and stuff, but they're going to be canceled too, more or less. I'm willing to put money that half of them are going to go down with the ship, and they're going to cancel. So obviously, what has that been like? 'Cause that's also sort of like this new technology adaptation as well.
Yeah, I've never actually been to a con yet, so I'm really excited to go to my first one. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and COVID, I am very reluctant to go to them yet. Probably won't this year, purely because my daughter can't have the vaccine. She's one of the unlucky ones where she was seriously ill when she was younger, so she can't have any.
And we're cut off.
I'm back. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back. So obviously with this entire con thing, because
Yeah.
obviously certain people can have it, certain people can't. The vaccination as a whole rollout. And I'm not trying to be political when I say this. It is a clusterfuck. By definition, by definition, not political. I think everybody can agree that this thing is a nightmare. It is going slow, and it is only going to go slow. Doesn't mean people are not going to get vaccinated. My parents just got their first shot, and they are significantly older than me. I am 28. My parents are at least 30 years my senior. So no knock against them, but I'm using this as a context point where they're getting their second shots in April. Okay, now I'm seeing on March 16th. Okay, April's not that far away. They're getting it sort of Easter weekend. So 2 weeks, guys, 2.5 weeks. My point though is that it took my parents legitimately 3 months to schedule that. So I don't know when I'm gonna get my shot. I have no idea. Not anti-vaccination. I just don't know. I'll be lucky if I get it in June, the way it's going, because I am not in the group that is eligible to get it. So earlier. So obviously, I don't know how you have a con in June when I'm getting my vaccination as a 28-year-old in June and then getting my second one in July. I don't know how we do it. That's my position on it. And I think that's why San Diego is not happening. Not to mention, who the hell wants to go be around 20,000 people that you don't know?
Yeah,
who are breathing down your neck and touching you.
I would not want to take the risk and bringing that home to my family. So.
Or I'm going to top you on that, bringing something else home. Have you ever heard of con crud? You back?
Yeah. What's that?
So con crud means that, let's say somebody has the flu. Let's say 10 people have the flu at a con. You could bet that at least 500 people on that Monday are going to have the flu. Let's say somebody has something that is relatively spreadable. So people go to a con. They're perfectly healthy on Friday. By Monday morning, they're sick. Now they're not life-threatening sick, but because think about it, you have 15,000 people. People are touching things. You're all sitting in the same seats at a panel. You're all going to the same rave at night. You're all sitting in a lobby together in a busy hotel that's not being sanitized. If one person is sick, that thing is going to spread because everybody's tight together. So, boom, that's what con crud is, unless you were asking facetiously, and then I'm going to look really foolish.
Well, I'd like to hope that they've taken at least some, measures to clean.
So, with con crud, what it's known, that has always existed in the con world. It's been around for 20 plus years. It's always existed, and COVID has only proven that cons are just not safe. And so now, this is why I'm not like terrified of a con, and I will go back eventually, but it's this idea that like there's got to be a lot of recommendations, I think, from a position and I'm curious where you think about that, where there's got to be a lot of procedures that are put in place and I'm not going to list a few off the top of my head. Lower attendance. Did definitely spaced out seating. Did definitely spaced out tables. And unfortunately, when you do all those things, if I could have a panel that has 250 people that I'm trying to market my stuff to, and now I can only have 125, the con's got to make it up to me in another way, by definition, because I'm not interested anymore.
Yeah.
In which that I'm interested in speaking to the most amount of people. Then secondly, with the vendors, if now there's less vendor space, but you have to still pay the same venue, tables go up. And then thirdly, if less people can attend, well, obviously you can only charge the vendors so much, and the people are selling shit that tickets have to go up. So it's like that's the end result, in my opinion. I'm curious what you think of all of that, because you've never been to a con, and so I don't know what's going to make you, as somebody who's never been to an anime or Comic-Con, want to go, because I'm curious about that.
Personally, I wouldn't go, to be honest. It would, not this year. I think it's just too big a risk. If they did something
let's say 2022, what would make you feel comfortable to go? Because obviously you have a child who is at risk, and obviously you don't want to infect your spouse, and so obviously nor do you want to get sick. And so what is going to make you feel comfortable, considering you've never gone before? Because I think this is something that because you're the prime suspect, and I hate to put you on like the spot here, and I don't think I'm putting you on blast, but like, what would make you feel comfortable? Because I've been to a con before, and so what's going to make me feel comfortable is not going to be the same. What's going to make you feel comfortable, and I think that you're the person who's never been, should be the standard, because you need to feel comfortable, not everybody else who's been before.
Get to a 4-day, so you cut the people straight away by half, and then you can control them easier. You can have the sanitation areas, the people cleaning the areas. So I think that would be the main thing. How many people are going to be there? If it's going to be stupid, then no, I'm not taking the risk.
Yeah, I'm not going to 50,000.
Yeah, if you have the con for like a couple of days and you extend it to control over the amount of people who are there at any one time. So you have to have a ticket. You can't just turn up and walk in. So they control the flow. Even if you have your ticket says you have to be there at 2:05 p.m., you have 3 hours. They can limit how many people are there. And if you get a colored band, you have to be there a certain time. You have to leave by a certain time. So they control how many people are in there at one time.
Yeah.
Various different ways of doing it. I imagine they've got bigger experts and me.
See, that's the thing, though, is that I don't think any of these cons know how to do it. I genuinely think that very few cons know how to do it. I think and I think they're going to learn real quick, and they're like, oh shoot, we can't do it. And I think that's the problem. I think that's why all these cons had to cancel. And I think they don't know how to do it, because the problem is that they can do it if money wasn't the problem. But let's be realistic. You got to pay for a venue. I live in Connecticut. New York Comic-Con is legitimately right around the corner. The Javits Center is in a cheap position. Now, if they had an excess of $1 million and maybe they cost them $200,000 to do it and they only made $800,000, that's a little bit different. But I don't think that they're making a killing. I don't think the margins are big enough that for the business to work and run the con in a safe way. That's why they're not running it. It's cheaper for them not to run it than to run it in a safe way. Which I respect the idea, saying, look, we can't make money by running it safely, so we're not going to run it. That's a good answer. It's not the best thing in the world, but at least it's smart enough to say, hey, we can't do X, so and be financially stable and be able to run next year as well. So we're just not going to play the game, so that when this thing gets over, we can play again, which is smart, because at least at the end of the day,
it's just being honest. I'd rather them say, yeah, we can't do it safely, so we're not doing it, rather than lie and become a super spreader.
And I also think it's this idea that, well, if a con doesn't happen, but the company's still in business, well, the worst thing that happened is the con didn't happen and they didn't kill anybody. You know, it sounds like a crazy thing what I just said, but isn't that better that you didn't get to go to the Comic-Con, but nobody was infected because of this con? I mean, that to me is just logic, is my point. And so I don't have a problem with cons not running at all. I think it's actually smart that they're not running to some degree, but I digress right there. Obviously, it's different for people who are selling comic books. I am selling a digital product, and my entire market and what I'm going to be digitally advertising in the next 3 to 6 months as it sits is legitimately going to be through Facebook ads. So I don't need a con to do what I want to do. But again, that's 6 months far out for me. So I'm in a very different section than a lot of comic people are when they're trying to sell their books at cons.
Yeah. This is purely from my point of view. This is, I know I can imagine people, looking forward to cons. Yeah, like you said, to sell their books, to sell their posters, and increase their fan base. So
networking is a big.
It's it's a legitimate place to do their business. So I feel for them. It's just myself at the moment. I just can't take the risk.
I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people can't take the risk because I hate to say this is going to sound really politically incorrect, but America and Americans are not healthy. For a bunch of them aren't. I would say 50% of Americans are not healthy. Now, are they completely unhealthy? No. But are we as a country a fit country? I think it's safe to say that we're not, including myself. And let's be realistic. I mean, honestly, so that's an issue by itself, is that, and when you have something like COVID out there, the more unhealthy you are, the more it increases. I was listening to something, and this doctor was saying that if you're like 50 pounds overweight, COVID adds like you're a 15-year higher risk. So if you're 50, you're almost treated like a 65-year-old in that position, which is crazy. But if you're 5 pounds overweight, it's 6 months. Okay, so I'm not trying to alarm anybody. Obviously, I'm not a scientist when I say this, not trying to scare anybody, but I think it's relevant to the con discussion where it's like, how fit are you that, can you withstand it? If you have like 0% body fat and you're, have a 6-pack, maybe you could go out to a con and have a good time. And if you're a guy, you should probably be shirtless because a bunch of women are going to go and flock to you. But that's not the point here. I digress right there. See what I did there? I completely just encouraged reverse fan service to everybody. You're welcome. But having said all that, obviously, I don't know how you feel about that with everything with the cons and all that stuff. Anything we didn't address in that realm, or you completely disagree with me, because everybody wants to disagree with me at some point.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. You cut out.
No, I was saying, I don't know how you feel about everything about that entire position with the cons, and just the fact that I think it's just a big safety risk. I think any time you go to a con in general, it's a safety risk. I think that COVID has only just shown it. I think it's very much like sunlight is a disinfectant. with everything that's going on with it. Where and I think going forward, and this is my view, is that people are going to have to decide what tolerance of risk they want to accept. And for you and me, it's kind of like if you have a 1-year-old. Maybe you don't want to go to a con because you don't want to bring something back home. And even if we get past COVID, you still don't want to bring something back home. But if you have a 16-year-old, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it is that it's your risk tolerance is going to determine whether you go to a con or not, because I think ultimately we're shifting over to selling books online and selling things to a much, much larger audience anyway. While at a con, maybe at a big con there's 100,000 people there, but really, are you selling to 100,000 people, or is it that you're maybe selling to 3,000 people? And can you reach those people online, which I think you can.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's going to be risk, and at the moment with COVID, it's just too much for me. Right, maybe next year, if things slowly go back to normal with the vaccines and things like that.
So my question is that because this also relates to cons. Do you think though that to some degree because of COVID, cons are going to become obsolete? Because and I haven't spoken about this before, but I really think that a good portion of them are. This entire business, as I stated in the last year with talking about competition, I've 10x'd my reach, I've 10x'd my brand by legitimately sitting in my living room or sitting at my parents' kitchen table or sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment before I moved. And legitimately, right, I cooked my dinner, had a half an hour, watched the television show, and then was just doing interviews, and I didn't have to leave. And sometimes I was doing 2-3 interviews. And so do you think that because everybody's at home now, everybody can get everything they want at home, that maybe people say, hey, look, I can get all the con stuff and all the cool memorabilia from my house. I don't have to leave my house. I'm working from my house, and I don't really feel like I need to go anywhere. And also, if I'm selling books, I can go and sell to everybody in the world. My audience has become bigger for less money, for less capital. I don't have to travel 6 hours to go to a con, buy a table, and have to carry all my stuff back and forth and actually hustle to sell my book versus running a Facebook ad that'll do it for me. Like, did you think like that's kind of where we're going, or do you think that cons are the way to go as far as all that stuff is, and even just how people interact?
I think it's going to be similar to what cinemas and theaters are going to be doing. They're going to have to adapt to what we're doing now. I think there will be still cons. I think the cinemas and theaters will survive, but I don't think there'll be as many or as big. I think people like what HBO are doing with the movies coming out at the same time that's on HBO Max. I think a lot more.
What were you saying? Cut out there.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. What were you saying about HBO? Because I like their company. I own AT&T stock, so I like talking about them. So just keep pumping them up for me, please.
Well, if HBO come knocking for Enenra, come on, make the series. I'm thinking the cinema is gonna, the cinemas how HBO Max are doing it. Like it comes out in the cinema as it does on HBO. I think the people are still going to go to the cinema, but I don't. People interacting and doing the comics. It's an experience. It'll probably no longer be as big a business as it was because, like you said, you can do it all from your house. You can do it online. You can do your business that way. But this is probably going to be more of a kind of I'll say getaway, like a conference kind of business trip. So it's going to be smaller, but it'll continue as it is. It's just going to evolve.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think also everybody is a content producer. Per year, I do more content per hour than cons produce right now. Last year, if I get my next 7 interviews done, I will have beaten some of the big cons as far as hour per hour of content they have produced this year alone, which is insane because I've done it for pennies on the dollar. And some of the content I produced this year just alone is much better than they've produced, which is ludicrous. And while I might not have the same viewership or the same reach as some of these big cons do, the fact that I am a contender as far as hours go is insane. And I think that, it's just one of those things that's awesome. So I agree that I think that they're not going out of business, but I think this business is going to shrink massively. And I think we're going to see a 50% reduction. And I mean, I'm big into comic book investing, and look at comic companies that are doing comic signings and grading and stuff. You could send your books in and get it graded that way. And while you lose the personal touch, you still get the item you want signed. And you still get it all taken care of, and you don't have to leave your living room. Again, I love it. I'm just one of those people that I've embraced this, and I think this is the future. And I think that anybody who thinks it's not, you're wrong. So on that note, and I'm also very pessimistic, but I'm very optimistic on this position, which means I'm probably also going to be wrong eventually, unless we do a negative times a positive, and then I'll be right. But I'm really bad at math, so we're not going to go do those just yet. But anyhow, I want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself, because obviously an ENRA is 3 and 4 is obviously being out there. 40%, guys. We got to get it across the board here. And so where can people find the Kickstarter? Where can people find you on social media? Where can people check out if you got a Twitter, Facebook page, Instagram accounts, websites? Obviously, if I didn't already mention the Kickstarter, where can people find the Kickstarter and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, as you can look at my username on this, Aaron_WROB. Type that in Twitter, you can find me pretty quick. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm pretty easy to find, Aaron Wroblewski. If we do go over, I have a little sketchbook which I plan to give out, as well as extras, which is combining the script with the page. So you get one side of the comic script with the little sketch that Ezekiel's done. So that's one of the Kickstarter add-ons, which I'm hoping to give. So yes, you can find me pretty much anywhere, really. I'm on Instagram, Wroblewski.
Still there?
Yeah, still here.
So what is your obviously everybody just so everybody is really caught up really quickly. I actually just put it up. Obviously, if you're watching on Twitch, I put it up on Twitch. I put it up on YouTube, the Kickstarter. Just put it up also on Facebook. So obviously, if you like what we spoke about this entire time, you definitely could check out the Kickstarter. And then even talking about social media, you got cut off on your Instagram, but I want people to follow you. So we're gonna go quickly. What is your Instagram? What is your Facebook page? And what is your Twitter account and any other social you got? Because I want people to follow you. Obviously, Kickstarter's up, so if you type in an ENRA on Kickstarter, it'll bring it up, and it's pretty cool. Even if you misspell it, it gets pretty close to it, and it'll actually recommend it, which is cool because it's issues 1 through 4. So I do want to make that clear too, because obviously I want people to check it out. So obviously, again, what is all your socials so people can follow you, because it's super important right now, social media wise.
I have my Facebook is Aaron Joseph Wroblewski. I do have a.
And we're not getting any luck today on this one.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Clearly. The internet gods are not in our favor at the moment. I
Yeah.
must have not given them a gracious offer this month.
Yeah, on Facebook, I have an Enra page. All you have to do is type in an Enra G novel. It takes you straight there. Please like it. I post updates as often as I can. ROB as it's shown on here. So that should be pretty easy to find. And my Instagram is Wroblewski Aaron, all one word.
And so, obviously, on that note, one of the things I've been saying to everybody, and I've been saying it since March 25th of last year, and I'm going to continue to say it as long as I'm doing this show, you have to support people financially. What that means, primarily, first and foremost, is that if somebody's got a Kickstarter or some merch going on, obviously buy the book, back the book. Whether you back it digitally, you back it physical, you back one, the thing that just came out, or you back issues 1 and 2 or 3 or 4, or back the whole thing. You should be backing something if you financially can do it. And when I say that, I mean that if you're in a tough position economically right now, where you're just making sure your mortgage is paid for, rent's covered, food, water, shelter, any medical stuff going on, making sure, your spouse is okay, making sure your kids are okay, making sure that your animal's okay, making sure you're okay. And I say this not to make a joke or make light of it, but making sure that you're okay, as well as making sure you're going to be okay next month too. Because COVID's hit a lot of people really hard. Obviously, some people are getting stimulus checks, a bunch of people aren't, and they're in a tough position. Also, make sure your neighbor's okay. Say hi to your neighbor. Make sure your neighbor's still alive, because it is a really tough position. And make sure your community is good too, as well. And if you're in that position and you're all financially stable, feel free, and then you really should support people you like and indie creators, because it is super important. Especially Kickstarter, because they can't make the book without you. But if you're in that tough financial spot, please support on social media. Obviously, we got Twitter, we got Instagram, we got Facebook, we got a few other places that you can check people out. And it is super important. Aaron just mentioned a bunch of his social media twice. It is super important. Even just take a look at the Kickstarter. Share the Kickstarter. Super important to share the Kickstarter. If you can't back a Kickstarter physically, just copy the link and share it on your Twitter. Share it on your Facebook page. Post it into an indie comic group. That's another thing that I'm actually going to start encouraging. If you're into indie comics, join an indie comic group. Join one. I don't run any of them yet. I don't know if I'm going to create one. I'm not going to go and promote my own ever. But there's a bunch of good ones out there, and it's super important. And share this link in one of those groups that allows you to share links. Because it does make a difference, and it is important. You never know who's looking at something. You never know who it can help. You never know who's looking at your wall, and you never know who's looking on Twitter. Mention somebody in an Instagram story. Super cool, super helpful. You never know. And if you have 50 followers, you never know, one of those people might say, hey, man, I want to check this out. Oh, sweet, this is a cool Kickstarter. So obviously super cool on that front. So that's something that I've been encouraging, and I think it's ultra important at this stage right now. For all the indie people out there and people who are supporting indie comics, definitely support creators. It is super important. Also, support podcasters who interview indie creators like myself. And when I say that, I'm literally asking you just to like and share this video and this podcast, just on social media, because it goes a long way. That's all I want when I do all this stuff at the moment. So please share it and like it. It means a lot to me. So obviously, on that note, I think that's a wrap.